My name is Samantha Rhodes, and I knew something was rotten the moment they handed us champagne flutes etched with "Optimization is elegance" right in the middle of a Montana resort rented out for a leadership restructuring conference. There were smoke machines, an Imagine Dragons remix playing on loop, and the new CEO LinkedIn handsome on the outside, but a narcissistic time bomb on the inside. And me, the woman behind every growth strategy for the past decade, had just been replaced by my own intern. The Montana air was crisp that October morning, but inside the Grand Lodge's conference center, the atmosphere was thick with corporate bullshit. I'd arrived early, as always, my decade of habits refusing to die, even as I sensed the axe hovering over my neck. The email had come 3 days prior. Mandatory Leadership Summit. Your attendance is critical. In corporate speak, that meant someone was getting executed. I just didn't think it would be me. Nathan Kessler stood at the podium, his artificially whitened teeth gleaming under the stage lights. I remembered when I'd hired him 8 years ago, a hungry analyst with big dreams and bigger ambitions. Now he wore a $5,000 suit and the smug expression of a man who'd forgotten where he came from. "Change," he began, his voice echoing through the hall filled with 200 of Quantara Analytics' top performers, key clients, and strategic partners. Change is the lifeblood of innovation, and today, we're announcing changes that will propel Quantara into the stratosphere. I sat in the third row, my hands steady on my lap despite the churning in my stomach. Beside me, my assistant Nora shifted uncomfortably. She knew something. They always know first. For too long, Nathan continued. We've been held back by legacy thinking, by processes and people who can't adapt to the velocity of modern business. His eyes found mine in the crowd. That's why, effective immediately, we're restructuring our entire strategic development division. The room held its breath. I held mine. Please join me in thanking Samantha Rhodes for her years of service. The spotlight swung to me like a sniper's scope. Sam has been instrumental in building Quantara to where it is today. But as we prepare for our IPO next year, we need fresh perspectives, young blood, digital natives who speak the language of tomorrow. I stood, because what else could I do? 200 pairs of eyes tracked my movement, some sympathetic, most simply relieved. It wasn't them. And taking over as our new VP of Strategic Development, Nathan's voice boomed with theatrical enthusiasm. Someone who embodies our commitment to nurturing talent from within Chloe Van. The knife twisted. Chloe blonde, perky, Stanford MBA still wet behind the ears, bounded onto stage. 6 months ago, she couldn't differentiate between EBITDA and a latte. I'd taught her everything, every model, every client relationship, every shortcut in our proprietary systems. Now she wore my future like a stolen dress. Thank you so much, Nathan Chloe gushed into the microphone. And thank you, Sam, for being such an incredible mentor. I literally couldn't have done this without you. Literally, the word hung in the air like a taunt. I smiled, shook hands, played the gracious loser while inside. Something dark and patient began to coil. They wanted me to slink away quietly. Another casualty of corporate optimization. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. The rest of the conference blurred past. Breakout sessions on synergistic disruption, lunch featuring locally sourced Montana beef, and conversations about pivoting to scale. I moved through it all like a ghost at my own funeral, collecting condolences and contact information with equal detachment. It wasn't until evening, when the open bar had loosened tongues and inhibitions, that the real intelligence gathering began. Complete bullshit, Marcus from engineering muttered into his whiskey. They're cooking the books. Sam, I know it. The Nova Grid product line they keep hyping, it's vaporware, doesn't exist. Careful, I said softly, but filed the information away. Rachel from sales was even more direct. 3 of our enterprise clients, they keep bragging about shell companies. I tried to set up implementation meetings, the contacts don't exist. By midnight, I had a mental file thick with suspicions, rumors, and breadcrumbs. But it was the text message at 2 a.m. that changed everything. We need to talk. Privately, V.A. Victor Ames, the largest shareholder. The kingmaker who'd installed Nathan as CEO despite my objections. If he was reaching out now, something was very wrong. Or very right, depending on your perspective. The next morning, while the conference continued its celebration of my professional demise, I drove out to Flathead Lake. Victor's instructions had been specific: the old boathouse, North Shore, come alone. He was waiting, a silver-haired wolf in a fleece vest, looking every inch the venture capitalist who'd made his first billion before 40. Samantha. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. How much do you know about Nathan's IPO preparations? Apparently not enough, since I'm no longer involved. His laugh was bitter. That's exactly why he removed you. You know the real numbers, the real state of our technology. He needed someone. Pliable. Chloe. A useful idiot, pretty, enthusiastic, and completely unaware she's being set up as the fall guy when this house of cards collapses. Victor paced the dock, his agitation visible. Nathan's falsifying everything: revenue projections, client lists, product development timelines. He's trying to pump the valuation before the IPO, cash out his options, and leave the rest of us holding worthless paper. Why tell me you backed him? Because I was an idiot, and because... He turned to face me. You're the only one who knows where all the bodies are buried. The only one with access to the historical data that could prove the fraud. Had access, they locked me out of everything yesterday. But you're smarter than that. You've been at Quantara since the beginning. You know every system, every password convention, every backdoor. He stepped closer. I'm proposing an alliance. You provide the intelligence. I'll handle the legal framework, media connections, and regulatory contacts. Together, we expose this fraud before it destroys the company we built. I stared out at the lake, its surface deceptively calm. What's in it for me? Revenge, justice, and preventing Chloe and 200 other employees from becoming unemployable when Nathan's scheme implodes. She's an idiot, but she doesn't deserve to have her career destroyed because she was too naive to see the manipulation. He had a point. My anger was focused on Nathan and the board members who'd enabled him. The collateral damage would be immense if we did nothing. I'll need resources, a team. Whatever you need. I have a war chest set aside for situations exactly like this. I extended my hand. Then let's burn it down properly. The flight back to San Francisco gave me time to plan. By the time we landed, I had a list of allies, former employees Nathan had purged, current staff whose loyalty to the company exceeded their fear of management, and external partners who'd been burned by Quantara's increasingly erratic behavior. My first stop was Nora's apartment. My former assistant opened the door wearing pajamas and a knowing expression. I was wondering when you'd show up. She handed me a flash drive. Everything I could download before they revoked your credentials: financial models, client contracts, email archives through last Tuesday. Nora, you beautiful genius. Nathan's an asshole. He tried to get me to spy on you 3 months ago. I've been collecting insurance ever since. She smiled wickedly. There's a folder labeled Recipes. It's not recipes. Back in my home office, I dove into the data. What I found was worse than Victor had implied. Not just inflated numbers, complete fabrications. The NovaGrid product line that Nathan claimed would revolutionize predictive analytics. The code repository showed 3 junior developers copying open-source algorithms and slapping our branding on top. The enterprise clients, a web of shell companies registered in Delaware, all tracing back to a single law firm known for its flexibility. But the smoking gun was in Chloe's own reports. The poor girl had been too eager to please, too inexperienced to recognize what she was signing off on. Her digital signature was on documents claiming we had patents that didn't exist, partnerships that were still in preliminary discussions, and revenue from products that hadn't shipped. Nathan had played her perfectly. When the SEC came calling, she'd be the one holding the bag. I spent the next 2 weeks building my shadow network. Marcus from engineering introduced me to 3 developers who'd been pressured to falsify testing data. Rachel from sales connected me with former clients who'd been promised features that were mathematically impossible to deliver. The most valuable ally came from an unexpected source. David Chen from accounting, no relation, despite the name reached out through encrypted email. I've been flagging discrepancies for months. His message read, Nathan's been using creative categorization to hide R&D delays, booking future commitments as current revenue. The auditors are asking questions he can't answer. We met at a dim sum restaurant in Chinatown, the clatter of dishes and Cantonese conversations providing perfect cover. He's planning to announce breakthrough earnings next quarter, David said, sliding a folder across the table. These are the real numbers. We're hemorrhaging cash. The IPO is the only thing keeping us afloat. How long before it becomes obvious? 6 months, maybe less. But by then, Nathan will have cashed out. The early investors will have dumped their shares on retail buyers and everyone else. He shrugged eloquently. The folder contained ammunition beyond my wildest dreams. Not just evidence of financial manipulation, but a clear pattern of securities fraud. Nathan wasn't just cooking the books, he was running a full kitchen. Victor had arranged for a shell company, Emergent Capital Partners, to express interest in a major investment. The plan was simple: get Nathan on a recorded call. Let his ego do the rest. Remember, Victor coached me, he needs to believe you're a mark, greedy, impatient, and not too bright. The kind of investor who falls for buzzwords and hockey stick projections. So basically, act like the board members who promoted him. Exactly. The Zoom call was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. I'd spent 3 days crafting my persona, Sandra Chen, a name chosen specifically to trigger Nathan's unconscious biases. A representative of new money from crypto wealth looking to diversify into real technology. I dressed the part designer blazer, excessive jewelry, the kind of makeup that suggested more money than sense. Victor had even arranged a fake background of a Hong Kong penthouse. Nathan appeared on screen 15 minutes late, a power play that told me everything about his mindset. Sandra, so sorry for the delay. You know how it is when you're disrupting entire industries. Everyone wants a piece of your time. Of course, Nathan, I completely understand. My clients are very excited about Quantara's potential. His eyes lit up. The hook was baited. For the next hour, I played the eager investor while Nathan painted increasingly fantastic pictures of Quantara's future. The NovaGrid platform would revolutionize 5 industries. Our client base was doubling quarter over quarter. The technology was so advanced, competitors were years behind. And the revenue projections, I asked, injecting just the right amount of greed into my voice. Conservative, if anything, we're sandbagging to manage expectations. The real numbers. He leaned toward the camera conspiratorially. Let's just say the IPO pricing is going to look like the deal of the century in hindsight. But I've heard concerns about your actual deployment rates. His face darkened momentarily before the salesman's smile returned. Competitor FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. They're terrified of what we're building. The truth is, we're already in beta with 3 Fortune 500 companies. A lie. I knew from the development logs that NovaGrid couldn't handle the data load from a medium-sized startup, let alone enterprise-scale deployment. Which companies my clients will want specifics? Under NDA, of course, but I can tell you one of them rhymes with Blamazon. He winked, actually winked at the camera. I had him, claiming a partnership with Amazon that didn't exist. That wasn't just fraud, it was fraud with a cherry on top. The call continued for another 30 minutes, each lie bigger than the last. Nathan claimed partnerships with companies I knew had rejected us, technologies that violated basic principles of computer science, and growth rates that would make a virus jealous. When we finally disconnected, I sat back and smiled. Victor's recording software had captured everything in crystal clear quality. How did it go? Victor called within minutes. Better than expected. He claimed we're in beta with Amazon. Jesus Christ, he really has lost touch with reality. Or he's desperate. Either way, we have what we need. The next phase required careful orchestration. We couldn't just dump everything at once that would look like a disgruntled employee's revenge fantasy. Instead, we needed to create a narrative that journalists and regulators couldn't ignore. I started with Margaret Walsh at the Financial Herald. She'd broken 3 major corporate fraud stories in the past 5 years and had a reputation for meticulous fact-checking. I have a source, I told her over encrypted phone. Someone inside Quantara with documented evidence of financial manipulation ahead of their IPO. How solid? Internal documents, recorded admissions, independent verification from multiple departments. I'm listening. I fed her the story in pieces, each revelation building on the last: the shell companies, the fake products, the impossible revenue projections. Margaret's questions grew sharper as she recognized the scope of the fraud. This is Theranos-level deception, she finally said. If even half of this is true. It's all true, and I have the receipts. While Margaret worked on the media angle, Victor engaged his contacts at the SEC. Securities fraud was their bread and butter. And a pre-IPO scandal would be exactly the kind of case that made careers. But I saved the best for last. The board meeting was scheduled for the first Tuesday in November. Quarterly reviews, IPO timeline discussions, the usual corporate theater. What they didn't expect was me walking through the door with a banker's box labeled "The Real Numbers." Security. Nathan's face went from red to purple. This woman is trespassing. Actually, Victor said calmly, I invited her. Shareholders' prerogative. The security guards hesitated. Victor Ames owned 35% of the company. Nathan might be CEO, but Victor's name was on the building. This is highly irregular, stammered Patricia Morse, the lead board member who championed Nathan's promotion. So is securities fraud, I replied, setting the box on the conference table. Would you like to see what your CEO has been hiding, or should we wait for the FBI to deliver the evidence? The room went silent. I pulled out the first folder. Exhibit A email chains between Nathan and your supposedly independent auditors, coaching them on how to categorize R&D expenses as deferred revenue. Nathan stood. This is corporate espionage. These documents were obtained illegally. Actually, they were provided by whistleblowers protected under Sarbanes-Oxley. But nice try. I opened the second folder. Exhibit B, the Nova Grid product you've been touting. Here's the development log. 3 junior developers, 2 of whom have since quit, copying code from GitHub and praying it compiles. That's a mischaracterization of our agile development process. Exhibit C, I interrupted, pulling out a thick printout. Shell companies registered as clients. Would anyone like to guess what address they all share? Hint, it's a mailbox rental in Delaware. Patricia had gone pale. Nathan, is this true? Of course not. This is a smear campaign orchestrated by a disgruntled former employee and... Exhibit D. I hit play on my phone. Nathan's voice filling the room. Let's just say the IPO pricing is going to look like the deal of the century in hindsight. I can tell you one of them rhymes with blamazon. You recorded me without consent. California is a 2-party consent state for personal conversations. But investor calls. Those are routinely recorded for compliance purposes. You literally agreed to it in the meeting disclaimer. I smiled sweetly. You should really read the fine print. Nathan, I thought you were detail-oriented. The board members were frantically flipping through the evidence I distributed. Each page revealed another lie, another manipulation, another federal crime. This is... Patricia couldn't finish the sentence. Systematic fraud designed to inflate the IPO valuation, allow insider cash-outs, and leave retail investors holding worthless shares. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Nathan's bravado finally cracked. You vindictive bitch. You couldn't handle being replaced by someone younger and smarter, so you're trying to destroy everything we've built. Chloe isn't smarter. Nathan, she's just more naive, which is why you chose her. I pulled out the final document. Her signature is on every piece of fraudulent documentation you've created in the last month. When the SEC investigates, and they will, she'll be the one facing federal charges while you're sitting on a beach in a non-extradition country. That's not... I wouldn't. Really? Then why did you transfer $2 million to a Cayman Islands account last week? Oh, right. Exhibit E. The board had seen enough. Patricia called for an emergency vote. Within 10 minutes, Nathan Kessler was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Security was called this time for him. As they escorted him out, he turned back to me with pure hatred in his eyes. This isn't over. Actually, it is. The Financial Herald article drops tomorrow morning. The SEC raid will probably happen by lunch. And that patent application you filed last month, the one where you replaced my name with yours as primary inventor, my lawyers will be in touch. The boardroom cleared slowly, members shell-shocked by the speed of Nathan's fall. Only Victor and I remained. That was... He shook his head. Magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. He had it coming. The board wants to discuss an interim CEO, someone who knows the company, can stabilize things before the regulators descend. I already knew where this was going. Not interested. Sam, I don't want to manage Nathan's mess. I don't want to be the one doing perp walks when the investigations expand. I definitely don't want to be the face of a company that enabled this level of fraud. Then what do you want? I thought about it. What did I want? Revenge had been sweet but ultimately hollow. Watching Nathan's empire crumble was satisfying, but it didn't fill the decade-shaped hole in my professional life. I want to build something real, something that doesn't require lies or inflated metrics or sacrificing naive young women on the altar of quarterly earnings. Victor nodded slowly. I might have some ideas about that. Interested in a coffee next week? As long as it's not in Montana. As I packed up the evidence box, Nora appeared in the doorway. There's something else you should see. She handed me another flash drive. I found this in the system yesterday. Nathan had drafted a press release announcing your termination for cause. He was going to claim you'd been embezzling, blame the financial discrepancies on you. I stared at the drive, then laughed. Really laughed for the first time in weeks. Of course he was. It's always projection with narcissists. What are you going to do with it? Nothing. He's destroyed. Adding more fuel to that fire would just be cruel. I paused. Besides, I have a better idea. The next morning, as news of Nathan's fraud dominated financial headlines and Quantara's stock price cratered, I sent one final email to all staff. Team, by now you've heard about the leadership changes at Quantara. You've probably also heard various rumors about why I left and what role I played in recent events. I want to be clear, I took no pleasure in exposing the fraud that threatened our company. But I couldn't stand by and watch years of honest work by hundreds of dedicated people be destroyed by one man's greed. To those who were misled, particularly Chloe Van, you were not complicit. You were victims of a master manipulator who saw your enthusiasm and perverted it for his own ends. The legal system will recognize this distinction, even if the court of public opinion might not. To those who knew something was wrong but felt powerless to act, I understand. Corporate hierarchies are designed to silence dissent. But remember, that truth has a way of surfacing, and there are always people willing to listen. To those wondering what comes next, Quantara will survive this. The technology we built, the real technology, not the vaporware, has value. The client relationships founded on trust rather than lies will endure. It will be painful. But the company will emerge stronger for having purged this poison. As for me, I'm moving on to new challenges. But I'll always be proud of what we built together before greed and ego corrupted it. Remember, optimization is elegance bullshit. There's nothing elegant about efficiency gained through deception. True elegance comes from building something real, something that creates genuine value for real people. Take care of each other. The coming months will test everyone. But if there's one thing I learned in my decade at Quantara, it's that the best work comes from teams who trust each other with the truth. Best regards, Samantha Rhodes. P.S. Chloe, if you're reading this, I left a complete set of strategic development templates and training materials on the shared drive under SR Archive. The password is Mentorship Matters 2023. You have the potential to be great at this job. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I hit send and closed my laptop. Through my window, San Francisco sparkled in the morning light, indifferent to the corporate drama playing out in its glass towers. My phone buzzed. Margaret Walsh. Incredible story. Already getting calls from Hollywood. Interested in consulting on the screenplay? I deleted the message. Some stories weren't meant for entertainment. They were cautionary tales. Reminders that in the pursuit of growth at any cost, we often destroy the very thing we're trying to build. But that was Nathan's lesson to learn, probably from a federal prison cell. Mine was simpler. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When they hand you champagne etched with corporate platitudes while stabbing you in the back, remember every detail. And when the opportunity comes to expose their lies, make sure you have receipts. The city beckoned with new possibilities. Somewhere out there was a company that valued truth over metrics, substance over style, and experience over the naive malleability of youth. Or maybe I'd build it myself. Either way, I was done optimizing elegance. From now on, I was in the business of elegant justice. And business was about to be very, very good. 6 months later, the epilogue wrote itself. Nathan Kessler was indicted on 17 counts of securities fraud. The trial became a textbook case of corporate malfeasance. His golden parachute transformed into a set of silver handcuffs. Chloe Van, cleared of all wrongdoing, became an unexpected star witness for the prosecution. Her testimony, coached by the templates I'd left behind, was devastating in its innocent precision. She'd kept meticulous records, thinking she was documenting her rise. Instead, she'd created a perfect chronicle of Nathan's deceptions. Quantara survived, barely. Victor's emergency leadership and a brutal restructuring saved the core business. The IPO was indefinitely postponed. But the company that emerged was leaner, more honest, and actually profitable. As for me, I took Victor's coffee meeting, then another. Within 3 months, we'd launched Rhodes Advisory, a consultancy specializing in corporate governance and fraud prevention. Our first client, a tech startup whose young CEO had read about the Quantara scandal and wanted to make sure she never became the next Nathan Kessler. "How do you prevent it?" she asked during our initial meeting. "Simple," I replied. "You remember that every number represents a person, every projection is a promise, and every lie you tell to make yourself look good is a future lawsuit waiting to happen." She took notes furiously, reminding me of Chloe but with harder eyes. This one wouldn't be anyone's patsy. What about the human element? The temptation to take shortcuts when the pressure mounts? I leaned back, thinking of champagne flutes and Montana mountains, and the moment I realized I was being executed by my own protege. You build a culture where telling the truth is rewarded more than hitting targets, where admitting failure is seen as strength, not weakness. And when someone hands you a glass etched with bullshit philosophy, yes, you remember that elegance isn't about optimization, it's about integrity. Everything else is just noise. She smiled, and I saw something in her expression that gave me hope. Not the naive enthusiasm of youth or the cynical calculation of experience, but something in between. The look of someone who understood that building something real was harder than building something flashy, but infinitely more satisfying. "When do we start?" she asked. "How about now? The best time to prevent fraud is before you're tempted to commit it." And so, we began. One truth at a time. Building something that would never make headlines or inspire Hollywood scripts. Just honest work for honest people in a dishonest world. It wasn't revenge, it was better. It was justice. And unlike optimization, justice was always elegant.